Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to follow up briefly and then discuss several questions on the comments made by Senator Kaine and Senator Jones. I like to think about decisions by looking at how will this look 10 years from now. And I believe when commentators and historians are looking back on this period, the name of the book will be The Great Abdication. Because over the past 50 years, Congress has essentially abdicated three of its most important powers. One, the power to declare war. We haven't declared war since 1942. Secondly, the power over trade, which is expressly delegated to Congress in the Constitution. But now we're about to delegate the power of the purse. I can't understand any member of this committee of either party countenancing any president taking funds from a congressionally appropriated account to use for another purpose. We may as well just forget about the whole appropriations process. Why not let the president's budget be the budget? Why have Congress intervene at all? And I'm not directing these comments at you, except to the extent that you are going to have to carry out what I consider an illegal order. I commend to you the case decided in December of 2019, El Paso versus Trump, where the judge found in an incredibly well-researched and thorough opinion that the utilization of these funds for the purpose of the border wall, which was not appropriated by Congress, was illegal. I think you fellows are being instructed to carry out an illegal order. Now, I'm aware that the Fifth Circuit stayed that decision, but the legal reasoning is so powerful, I find it very hard to believe that it's going to be overturned ultimately. But the idea that this Congress is allowing the most fundamental power to be turned over to the executive in total contravention of the whole scheme of the Constitution, to me, is just unbelievable that either party would allow that to happen. The framers assumed that institutional jealousy and rivalry and protection of the prerogatives of each institution would balance one another. That's the whole theory of checks and balances. And yet, here we are, again, as Senator Kaine pointed out, looking toward the executive reappropriating 1/3 of the military construction funds for a purpose that Congress has not approved. Sorry, but I just had to make that point. Admiral Williams, I have to ask you, I noticed your career in naval aviation. Did you ever have the happy privilege of working out of the Brunswick Naval Air Station?
I have been there. We went up there, it was a reserve squadron up there. I had, I believe, C-130s. I think it was more of a mobility aviation command.
I was hoping perhaps you had been stationed there. Unfortunately, that station was closed due to a BRAC decision, which is one of the reasons I will probably never vote for a BRAC proposal, because it was such a poor decision, in my opinion. Mr. McPherson, you talked, and I was delighted to hear that the very first words out of your mouth in your terms of your priorities was suicide. I hope that you will do a comprehensive review, because there are a number of programs which you've mentioned, but they don't appear to be working. A basic principle of military thinking is the after-action review. Right. And I would hope that you would look at all the programs, all the facts, all the data which you've suggested is becoming available to try to do something about this. This is a scourge on our military, and it's a tragedy for these individuals and for their families. And these people are putting their lives on the line for their country and then taking their own lives. That's something that I think needs to be addressed. I was delighted to hear you say that. Will you commit to me to doing that kind of thorough review?
Absolutely, Senator. Well, the statistics show that every other day I read a report of a suicide. That's
a great tragedy for this
That's heartbreaking.
country.
And
Great
I commit
tragedy.
to you that's exactly what I'm going to do.
One other question. You talked about recruiting, and we've fallen below our goals in the last several years. I'm worried about the geography of recruiting. I was on a panel at the Reagan Forum a year ago about the disconnection between the general public and the military.
Right.
In part because of the professional military, which we've discussed. But within that is a disconnect between regions of the country. The Northeast has virtually no military facilities anymore. And if you look at the geography, the demographics of the military, as you know, it's concentrated in the South and Southwest. Will you commit to me that you will look in terms of your recruiting strategy at broadening the geographic base of the Army?
I can commit to that, Senator. One of the things that we've done, Secretary McCarthy and Secretary Esper did, was identify 22 cities, the majority of which are not in what we call the SMILE, 22 target cities that we will focus our recruiting efforts on both last year, this year, and going forward at recruiting more individuals from those geographical areas that are underrepresented in our formations. The goal is, if confirmed, I'll be on the road pretty quickly because senior leadership, either Secretary McCarthy or myself, General McConville, General Martin will visit each of those 22 cities and the recruiting offices in those cities to bolster that effort.
I appreciate that because that's important not only in terms of the demographics within the military, but in terms of the connections and relationships between our society generally and the military. We don't want a military caste that's separate from the rest of the country.
We're of the same mind, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Gentlemen, this is